Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay, just a bit of technical difficulties, but welcome to today's webinar on forms. So last week we did our webinar on the forms editor. Today we'll just kind of strictly go over the forms process, how those get sent out to patients, and all of that. If we have some time, we can always touch on the forms editor again a bit. Okay. Okay, get myself situated here. Okay. So from the forms page, as you can see, at the top, you'll click forms, and then the first thing that you're going to see is going to be completed forms. Now, completed forms will look like this, where you'll have the patient's name, the name of the form that they completed, when they completed it, and then here you can also download it as a PDF or preview the form. Up at the top, we can also show completed forms that have not synced. So as you can see, we have a check mark here, and this is just going to show that the submission of the form has synced back to your practice management software. If for some reason it hasn't synced back, it'll show with an error icon, and then it'll be in this list here. Here as well, you can change the date range. So you can view them in the last 7 days. You can be more specific with the date ranges. And you can search by patient name. So that's what the completed forms will look like. Here as well, if anyone gets a form marked as completed in office, it won't show you these action buttons, but instead will just say completed in office. Next, we have our pending forms. So these are going to be forms that were sent out to patients already, either through the automation or manually. So it'll have the patient's name, and then it'll show all of the forms or consents that were sent to that patient, when this message was sent, and then if the patient has viewed it. And then over here in the actions, you can send them a reminder to complete their forms. You can submit them manually, which would give that completed in office status, or you can cancel the form invite so that this particular form doesn't appear for the patient to fill out when they go to view their forms. Similar to the completed forms, you can view a custom date range. You can change the dates here, and you can search for the patient. You can also view it by completed in office or cancel the form invite. Does anyone have any questions right now? Okay. Up at the top on the pending forms page, you will also see messages sent. So here you would see all of the forms that have been sent, whether it's either a new patient form invite or an existing patient form invite. It would have the type of message that went out, so either an email or text message. It'll have the recipient name, the body of the message that they received, and then the status. So if the message went through, if it was sent, if it was opened, if they clicked on the link. And then here you can also filter it to show either, if I click that, it is just going to show email. If I click text and then unselect email, it would just show me text, or you can view both. And then in the not sent section, these will be messages that have failed to go out to the patient. Typically, the reason that you'll see here will be the patient is opted out, or they didn't have a valid phone number or a valid email. So that you will see here in this section. you'll see the type of message that went out and the recipient's name. You can also customize the date ranges or search by the patient name. And then you can also view it by either new patient form invite or existing patient form invite. Okay. Now to move on to the forms. So under the Forms tab, you're going to see a couple different things. So here you're going to see forms and then consents. So anything listed here is going to be a patient form. If I click on consents, it's going to bring me to all of the consent forms. So first, let's go over forms itself. So from this page, the first thing you'll also see is create new. So as discussed in the Forms Editor webinar, if we click this, we can create our own forms. Next, you'll see where it says show hidden forms. So this is basically if you deactivate any of these forms, by toggling this, you're going to see those deactivated forms. So I believe right now in this thread, you can see this clinical photo transfer form has been deactivated. So it's slightly grayed out. And then you can see it's been deactivated by this symbol here. And we can activate this again if we would like to continue using this form as well. Hi, Dr. Edward, do you have any questions so far? Okay. So the next thing that you'll see here is we have this blue banner, and this blue banner is going to give you some definitions for this frequency setting that we have here, which I'll get to in a moment, but just always keep this in mind when you're setting that frequency for your forms. Up at the top here, we also have this edit form order. So as you can see, we have our forms numbered here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Here we can update that. So we can move any of these around. So appointment cancellation is currently the first form. Maybe I want to move it down here. And now it's going to show it as the fourth form. And now what this does, creating this form order, when a patient is sent a long list of forms, it's just going to make sure to keep those forms in that specific order so that they know which ones to complete. Now, you can choose to have that or leave it as is, no big deal. Next, we have this import from library. This is more so if you have multiple locations, you can always transfer forms within the offices. Okay, so now this blue banner, as you can see, it has the definitions for manual frequency, once, and then every time, which is either every time, every 6 months, every 12 months, or every 2 years. Now, for example, we have our patient information form. This form here is going to be listed as form number 2. Right now, it's a default form and a minor form. So you can choose which one needs to go out depending on the age of the patient. Next, we see that this form is listed in our new patient package. So anytime a new patient is sent that new patient package, this form is going to be a part of that. And then we have this form set at an every 12-month frequency. So what that means is this patient, the new patient comes in, fills out their patient information form, and then at that next 12 months of their first appointment, they're going to get that form again to update any relevant information that needs to be updated. Then we have this required for section. Now what this does is allows you to select a service code, which will then make sure that this form gets sent out to anyone that has one of these appointments listed. So if it's something specific, let's say, we have this Epworth sleepiness scale. Maybe not every patient needs that, but just someone that's coming to get some sort of night guard or No, something related to that. You can set that service code here. And then lastly, we have the folder section. So this just goes, you'll just want to select whichever folder within your practice management software that you want this completed form to save to. So for this one, we're going to keep it at medical histories. Then on the actions tab, we can go to settings of this form. So here you can see that the default form is going to display all of these. You can also require some of these, which means that the patient does have to answer them. And then the lock status will be coming soon. And then you can set this for minors as well. Here you can deactivate the form. So like I showed you before, if you don't want to use the form, you can just select that and then it'll become inactive. And then as you can see, it hid the form. So that lock status is just gonna remove the patient from having to fill anything out. It'll just kind of auto-populate that information. Then we have the form preview. So this is what it would look like for the patient. And then if we click this menu, we can edit the form. We can duplicate the form. It went somewhere down here, but as you can see, it says copy. That way you can duplicate it and make any changes to this one if maybe you want to save the original form the way it is. And then we can also copy it, which as I mentioned, this will just copy the form from one location to another, which is beneficial if you have multiple locations. It's taking a bit, so let's refresh. And then you can also print the forms. So you'll select if you want to print the default form or the minor form, and then if you want to print the English version or the Spanish version. You click print, and then it'll give you this option here. Any questions about this page specifically? Okay. We'll go on to our packages. So as I mentioned before, the new patient package, as you can see here, we have a couple forms that are saved into this package. So that can be viewed and edited over here. So if we click into this, let's say we want to edit, you're going to see that this new patient package includes these 5 forms and then this one consent. We can move this around. We can edit, we can delete the form. We can also add additional forms.
Yeah, Lisa, there are some questions on the chat also. You may want to take a look at it.
Yes, Michelle, you can send those forms in Spanish. Now, the one thing I will note about Spanish forms is that the default forms that we provide you, those are going to be automatically translated in Spanish. But let's say you have a custom form that you would like to be translated in Spanish, that will have to be done by someone. The translation will have to be done by someone at the office. So just keep that in mind because it won't automatically show. So for example, if I click this form, let me go to the preview. So in the preview of this default form, if I click the ES, it's going to change that information to Spanish. And then the same thing, this is exactly how the patient will see it. If they want to view the Spanish forms, they'll see the EN and the ES. You can also set the patient's preferred language to Spanish, and that way they get the default Spanish form instead of the English version first. But this option is always going to be there if you have that enabled. But then if you have a custom form, just note that clicking ES is just going to show the information in English again. So the translation does have to be included on the forms. So for the forms itself, right now we only have Spanish, but we do have several translator AI translations available in text message and email templates, which I can show you when we get to that point as well. But no, right now forms is strictly in Spanish, but I could see us definitely adding other languages if that's something that is in need. Yeah, same for answer your question, David, as well. So when you want to translate a form in Spanish, when you're on the form editor, you'll click into these sections and you'll see here it gives you the option to give that Spanish label. So you'll have the English version of it, and then you'll have the Spanish version. So just keep that in mind when you're creating custom forms, that you'll just need to give that Spanish translation in this section here in order for it to update. So now back to forms. Like I said, you can edit them here. You can also print all of these forms, same way you saw on the forms page where we printed it individually. The form package also has a specific link. So if I want to send a specific package, I can copy this and then just manually text it to the patient. And then once they click this link, they'll be able to view the new patient package form specifically. Now up here, we can add new packages. It's just important to note that if you start to add new packages, these packages aren't going to go in the automation, but will have to be manually sent to the patients. The only package that goes out in an automation is going to be this new patient package, which I'll get to in the settings. So anytime a new patient comes into the office, if you have that automation turned on, this new patient package will be sent out. But if you have a package of specific forms that you want to send out to patients that you create from here, you do have to send them manually. So let's say I list create package or plus package. You'll give it a name. You can give it a description, and then you can add those forms that you want to send to these patients. But for example, giving it that existing patient name isn't going to send it automatically to the existing patients. So packages in the portal for patients, are you referring to the patient portal itself or just when forms get sent? Okay, in the patient portal, that is a good question. So in the patient portal, the forms are just gonna show whatever forms have been sent to the patient. So you'd still have to manually send the forms to the patient if you have a specific package that you want to send out to them. If it's the new patient package, it's already going to send to the patient, and they'll be able to access it in that patient portal form. Perfect. So that is packages. The next here we have lists. So I briefly went over this in the forms editor, but basically this section here is going to correlate more relevantly to your medical history form or any form where you want to add these options. So there'll be a section in the forms editor to choose medications, diseases, allergies, and then from that list, whatever the patient fills out will write back to the practice management software based on the PMS mapping that is selected here. But like I said, this goes specifically directly into those forms. So we covered this already, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. But if anyone has specific questions on the list, I'm happy to go into further detail. Okay, next we have templates. So templates here are going to be the message that goes out to patients depending on what kind of form invite they get. So if a patient is sent a manual invite, we have this template here. If they have pending forms and maybe you want to send them a reminder, this is the template that they'll get. If you send them a treatment plan to sign, this is the invite that they'll get. And then if you're sending them a signed treatment plan, this is the email that they'll get. And then if you're sending them a copy of their signed consent, this is the email that they will get. Now here we can test any of these. So you would enter your phone number, select the language, and then send, and then you'll be able to preview what that would look like. You can also preview that directly here, and you can edit these. Now, if let's say you've edited a lot of these and decide I no longer want to edit this or keep them edited, I can reset all of my templates back to the default version. So that's what you get on this page. Next, we have our settings page. So this is going to heavily correlate with our forms. And so it'll be the first thing you want to go through when you're setting up your forms. So here we have our online form settings. So here you'll select the default folder or category where you want those patient forms to be saved. So as you saw, most of them are going into the medical history form. If I want to update that, I can do that here as well. Next, we can choose which folder the consents go into. So most of them are going into this insurance documents, but I can definitely change that here as well. And just note you'll want to save every time you make any changes. And then if you choose this, that means that the guardian info will be shown on any consent form as well. Next, we have the folder where you want your treatment plans to be saved to. This little message right here is what the patient will see at the top of the treatment plan message that they get. So you can always edit that here. And then you can always select use doctor's treatment notes. Otherwise, we have this default form that shows on the treatment plan as well. And then it'll have a statement here for the patient to agree to the treatment plan acceptance, which you can edit as well. And then down here, a couple options where you can select automatically recommend consent forms when treatment plan is presented. So if this is selected, anytime a treatment plan is sent to a patient based off of any codes that they might have, it'll automatically recommend consent forms that they might need to fill out prior to scheduling or completing that treatment. Same thing here, we can show the guardian info if this is selected. And then here you can also require the guardian info. And then you'll just want to hit save with any of those changes. Next, we have our scan documents. So here you can select that folder where any of those documents will be saved to. And then here we have the reset buttons. So if you make changes to any of our default forms and you would like to reset them to the default setting, you can select this. Same thing with any of the consents. And then same goes for packages. And then, like I mentioned previously, on the templates page, you can reset it from there, or you can reset it from this section as well. And then this package description, so this shows at the bottom of the forms page. This is just a message that the patient sees. You can always change this. So if you don't maybe want this present at all, you can delete it, or you can just update the verbiage here as well. And now we get to the form automations. So the new patient form automation would be that package that I've been talking about. Here, if you select this, it's going to welcome the new patients and remind them to complete new forms as soon as the appointment is created. We'll have the email that goes out and the text. You can always edit that here. And then you can always add some additional filters too. So you can exclude or include patients if the following services are scheduled. You can exclude or include any patients scheduled on any of the following chairs. And you can exclude or include any patients that might have any of the following tags. Once you've made those changes, you can select save, and then you'll just want to make sure that you activate this. Because if it's inactive, then the new patients are not going to get any of those forms. And then similar to the new patient form, we have the existing patient forms. Now, the existing patient forms are going to go based off of the frequency that the forms have been set. Like I mentioned, if you create an existing patient package form, that package is not going to go out. It's just going to be the forms based off of their frequency. Now, it's pretty similar in how it's set up. The only other difference that you have for the existing patient form is that you have the option to select how many days out these messages are sent. So you can select either 1 or 2 messages, and you can maybe say, you want this to be a week out, and then this one may be 2 days out. It just depends on how frequently you want patients to be messaged. Save your changes, and then just be sure to activate that as well. And then down here, we have a test section. So you can always test this by creating random appointments and then selecting if you want to test the patient form or existing patient form. Good question. No, if they complete their forms after they've received that first message, they won't get a second one. That'll just be a reminder for them to complete forms. And then just in case you forgot what the frequency looks like for these existing patient packages, it's going to go based off of this. So just keep that in mind when you're setting the frequencies. Yeah, so if you're talking about the new patient forms, then you would okay, so in the form section here, you won't be able to choose the preference, but you can choose that either, you can't specify that per patient. So let's say, let me go to a different site. Okay, give me a moment here. I'll come back to that question in a minute. Yeah, so for the patient packages, it's going to be a little bit different. You'd have to do it per patient. But it's going to give you, it's going to show you here why maybe the patient didn't receive it. Can't specifically state why we don't give that option here. But that is a good call. I'll show you how to change it per patient. Just bear with me. So next I want to talk about the PbN printer. So this is going to be for statements. So if you want to upload a statement when you send a patient a message, this is what this comes into. Now this is going to be more specific to Dentrix offices. But I will send some resources on how to connect this and everything that you need to know about the PbN printer. For the tablets, so as you can see, here is where you can register your tablets. We have the kiosk app as well, or you can use it for a browser. Apologies, let me get us to an example of this. Yeah, so the tablets are going to be for the kiosk or for a web browser, and I can show you in a few minutes exactly what it looks like specifically for the web browser. So basically when we want to add a new tablet, you'll select add a new tablet, you'll give it a name, and then you'll be prompted with this screen. If you are going to use the kiosk app, you can just take a picture on the tablet and it'll take you there, and then it'll prompt this 6-digit code. If, for example, I want to just use it on the browser, it'll take me, I'll go ahead and put this information, and then it'll take me to a screen where it asks me for that 6-digit code as well. Once it's been added, you'll see the tablet name, you'll see the browser that it's using, the status of the tablet, and whether it's connected, and then when it was last connected. Here you'll also have a PIN number. So this PIN number is widely used if you're going to do like the practice access. So it'll, depending on which tablet you're going to use, it might ask you for a 4-digit PIN, and here's where you'd find that. Here you can also delete any tablets that you're not using, and then you can lock or unlock the tablet, and that just will lock the use of the tablet. Lastly, on this page, before I dive into the tablets a bit more, you'll have patient media. So anytime a patient uploads an image from one of the forms, one of the tablets, that information is going to show on this page. You can change the date range, and you can search by patient here as well. Okay, so let's go and look at a tablet. Say I want to do a test tablet. Since I'm going to use it on the browser, I'm going to go ahead and copy this link. And it's going to bring me to this page. Here I will copy that number down and click continue. And then as you can see, it brings me to this screen. Now, when you're using the browser, it's going to just let the patients do it if they're checking in for their appointment. So it won't be as specific as the kiosk app. So I'd recommend using that. But if the patient's appointment is within a 2-hour window, you can check them in, and then they would have their forms listed. Here I can also view those forms or send a patient forms. And then I can select the specific patient I want to send this to. So now if I've sent them the form, they can go ahead and just sign it in the moment, or fill them out in the moment. So if the patient comes in and they're not within that window, you can always send them the forms and it'll show up here. But the kiosk app is recommended as it will give you more options. I don't have a tablet available at the moment to demonstrate that.
Alyssa,
Yes.
I have a question for you, please.
Yes.
Can we integrate this into the reminders campaign, like to send the patient a link, a customized link for him?
Yeah, so what campaign specifically were you thinking of maybe using this for?
The reminder campaign.
Oh, the reminder campaign. Yes. So in the reminders campaign, all you would have to do is edit the messaging. So let's say, okay, we're going to go to the reminder campaign. We have various messages that you can add this to, but let's say we want to do it to the primary day before reminder. I'd go to the template that I want to edit, and then I would select wherever you want to insert that link, you'll go to insert placeholder. And then you would send the pending forms. Pending forms link. So as long as you're adding that to the template that you want it to be in, the patient will get that link with their pending forms. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Now to go back in regards to different languages for templates. So any of the templates that we currently have, we can make edits to them. Let's see. We're gonna have an AI generator for these soon, so you won't see them right now, but that'll be an option. I think the best place for this though is going to actually be from our communication center. So let's say we are going to send a patient a message about forms. We'll go down here. Here on the communications page, you can also send the forms manually, as I mentioned. So for example, if we created that existing patient form, since that's not going to go out to the patient, what I can do is select that here. It'll add those forms that I wanted to send to the patient. And then I can choose whether I send it as an email or a text. I can also choose whether I send it to a tablet that's connected, and then you can send it off to the patient. So as you saw, I got an error message there. When it comes to the consents, if you have to add a custom tag, it'll give you that error. So you would just click there and add the information that it's asking for, and then it'll let you send that message. So now it will typically say the patient's name, but this is a test message. And then it'll give them that forms link. Now, another thing about translations, right now, the only thing we have is a really in-depth translator when it comes to like text messages. So here, if I were to say hello, I can then click on this drop-down menu and select translate your message. And then it's going to give me everything here. And then I can send that off. So right now that's where we have the most translations, but it's definitely that's something we can explore for our forms as well. Now, the one last thing I did want to touch on that I kind of skipped over is consents. So consents are going to be a little bit different from our forms where it won't necessarily ask the patient to enter all of this information. It's just kind of have them initial and accept whatever they might be getting a procedure done for. So for example, if they're going to do a crown, you can send them this consent that we have defaulted here. The information here is going to auto-populate with their information. Except for the teeth numbers. So that'll ask you to, it'll have you enter the teeth numbers right before you go to send the form for this patient. Excuse me. Here we have the name of the form, the category that it's in. You can also print the form. You can reset it to its default settings, or you can duplicate it. You can also try the form. So if you click try, it is going to give you the custom tags, as I mentioned. So if this is for a crown on number 9, you would enter that there. And then you would see it's automatically filled out the name of the patient, their date of birth, and then crown or tooth number 9. And then it'll just have them agree and confirm because that's how this form is set up. We also have some options on consents where we can add additional checkboxes or patient initials. So if I go back to that consent, if maybe I want them to initial here instead of it just giving a number, I can insert the patient initial tag, and then it'll have their initials here as well. And then any of this can be edited. You can also select certain service codes. So let's say, since this is for a crown or a bridge, you can select any services related to crown and bridges. So anytime someone is being sent forms, it'll recommend these forms for those service codes as well. And then we can also do a Spanish version. But for consents, it won't automatically do it, so something to keep in mind as well. We'd need to translate that for you. And then down at the very bottom, you can select whether a doctor's signature is required, or if both a doctor's signature and a witness signature are required. Now, what's important to keep in mind for this is that anytime a signature is required, you will have to go to the completed forms tab. And then you'll see an icon on here prompting the signature. The form won't save back into your practice management software until that signature has been entered on the completed forms page. So just keep that in mind when you are sending requests for consents and whether you are selecting signature required. And then you can also send the forms to the patient through the test or through their patient overview link. Let's see. So let's say this is the patient's overview. I can go to form. Here I can see they have all of these pending forms already. So for that, it's a little bit tricky because if you send them out with all of the forms already, they might go ahead and complete it ahead of time. I would recommend if you want them to fill it out the day of, that it's just manually sent or sent to the tablet when they come in. But as I was saying, you can view their pending forms here, you can view their completed forms, and then you can also send them forms from here. And then when it comes to the communications, I know we were discussing how to just send text or email. So if you wanted to just send emails or text to patients, one, you can set that up from your practice management software. And then two, let's say, you want to send it to Jennifer, but she only wants a text message. Here under the details, we can set that up. So if I go to email, I can select what kind of email she can receive. I can also select what kind of messages she receives. And then some additional settings for appointment reminders as well. So a couple of different ways of doing it, but there isn't an easy way to just distinguish whether an existing or new patient form is just for email and text. It's going to just try to send it to both to ensure that the patient gets the communication. And then if the patient maybe doesn't have an email or doesn't have a phone number, it's just going to send it to that one medium. Any other questions about forms or consents? Did you want me to dive a bit deeper into anything? Okay, this recording is going to be available on the Learning Center. I will also send a follow-up email for everyone on this call with some resources. And if you have any additional questions or want to talk through any settings, just feel free to reach out to me. And yes, you can find our support information in the chat. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Alyssa.
You're welcome.